All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Mastering Price Adjustments. We're going to talk today about how to go about getting a price adjustment. So, thank you all for being on, whether you are on StreamYard watching or Facebook Live. Let us know, drop a comment, let us know you're there. I did see Diana dropped a good morning, so thank you for doing that. But if you're on right now with us, drop a good morning, let us know you're there. Appreciate everybody being on today. So, we know the market is shifting. We know the market has shifted. I was looking yesterday. If you're here locally in St. Louis, we know that we are over 3 months of inventory right now, which for the last couple of years, we have been in a 2 month supply of inventory or less. And what that means is they call it months of inventory or absorption rate. What that means, if no new homes hit the market today, within 3 months or 3.2, I think that's what it was yesterday, all of the homes would sell. So we know anything less than about 5 months is a what we consider a seller's market. Anything between 5 months or greater to 6 months is a balanced market. Anything beyond that is a seller's market or buyer's market. So with that said, right now we are in still a seller's market, but inventory is shifting up. So I would anticipate many of you having listings right now, you may have to begin having those price adjustment conversations. So, because we know we have to start having price adjustment conversations, we need to practice them because for the last handful of years, we've been able to list property. Even if we priced it remotely in the realm of reality, it was going to sell. And it was probably going to sell at over asking price with appraisals waived, with inspections waived. All of that stuff is starting to come back. So, let's dive in and talk about price adjustments. So, the first thing I want to hit on is this: price adjustments. If you have a listing sitting right now, if you have a listing that is on the market, it hasn't sold, this is from my experience. This is also from a National Association of Realtors statistic that I find to be very, very accurate from my experience of selling a lot of homes in the past. So if we are priced correctly, and this is also something I talk about sellers on the listing presentation when we talk about price, because remember, if you've gone through our listing presentation training, what are the three things that get a home sold? The first is price, the second is the condition of the property, and the third is marketing. Of the three, price is always going to be the most important because I can do all the marketing in the world, and if the house is overpriced, all I'm doing is over marketing an overpriced home. I can have the property in fantastic condition and do tons of marketing, and if the price is too high, no one's going to buy it. If the property condition is terrible, but there's enough value based on the price and where it's priced, the home's going to sell. So price, of the three things that sell a home, price is always the most important. Now, with that said, in this market, and this is what I would tell a seller on a presentation, in this market, if we are priced correctly, we should get offers pretty quick, meaning in the first week. I know my marketing works. When we go to market, what we're doing is testing price. Now, if we're getting a lot of activity on your home in the first 7 to 10 days and no one's making an offer, we're most likely 4 to 6% off on price. So if I have a house on the market for the first week, I'm getting tons of internet activity. I'm getting 10, 12, 15 showings through the door, even 6 or 7 showings through the door. I'm getting a showing a day, let's say, and no one's making an offer. And even though the feedback might say, great house, priced correctly, client's not interested. They're not interested because they didn't see enough value in the home for the price that's being offered. So if I'm getting a lot of showings and no offers, I'm 4 to 6% off on price. Now, if we're getting low showings in the first week, if we're only getting a couple of people through, I might be 6 to 12% off on price. If drive-bys only, let's say we're getting lots of internet activity, no one's coming to see the house though, we're 12% or greater on price. So we really missed the mark on price. So keep that in mind. Take a screenshot of this. Just keep these numbers in mind. You'll see that they are very, very accurate. If you're getting tons of activity on your listing and no one's making offers, drop it 5%, you'll probably get an offer. So keep that in mind with a price adjustment. Now, the next thing here is what to use in order to get a price adjustment. This has been my experience with a lot of agents. They don't know how to have the price adjustment conversation. And so because they don't know how to have the price adjustment conversation, what they tend to do is not call their seller. They try to avoid their seller. And what happens is, and this is what I did early on in my career, I would list a property, would get some activity in the first week, nobody made offers. I got some general feedback. I never called the agents to get more thorough feedback. And then showing stopped. And showing stopped. And then I sat there and said, well, I don't know what to tell my seller, so I'm just not going to call them. And then another week would go by and I wouldn't call my seller. And then finally the third week, I just feel silly not calling them. And then they call me. And then I'm very unprepared. I don't know what to say. So this is a way that I'm going to teach to how to get ahead of this, to make sure we don't have awkward conversations, to make sure that we have the information we need in order to have a very candid conversation with our sellers. I'm sorry, I got a crying baby in the background there, but it's kind of the, hopefully you guys can't all hear that, but I'm sure you can. But anyway, so what to use to get a price adjustment. So the first thing we want to use is we need to make sure we're getting feedback from showing time. So we need to make sure we're getting feedback from showing time, and with feedback from showing time, making sure we're getting thorough feedback. So when we get showing information or get information on showings, when we get feedback, what happens is if it just says nice house, wasn't a good fit for our client, thanks for letting us show. That's not very good feedback. That's not going to help us. And so what we need to make sure we're doing there is calling that agent and saying, what can we do to make this house number one on your client's list? Is there anything we can do to get this house to be number one on your client's list? And the reason I say that is because I've had experiences in the past where an agent said, oh, they didn't like the house, or it was a nice house, but just not the right fit. And I called that agent and I'd say, well, what isn't the right fit for that client? And I said, well, they felt like the carpet was too worn and they would have to replace the carpet. And I said, well, what if we give a carpet allowance or a credit to replace the carpet? Would they be interested? Well, yeah, I think they would. Well, great, let's pull a deal together. We pulled the deal together. So sometimes agents don't think outside of the box. That's why I think it's very important that you call every single showing. Don't just rely on the emails to go out, but call every single showing and make sure that you're getting very detailed feedback and ask that question. Is there anything we can do to make this house number one on your client's list? And if it's things like that, like condition type things, then yeah, maybe we can make it work. So hit counters. I want to look at Maris hit counters and figure out how much activity I'm getting online. I always want to pull recent comparables in the subdivision to see what's selling in there. I also want to go back to the seller's motivation. What was their reason for wanting to sell? And so I want to do that and then utilize reverse prospecting as well. I think Vince, you're on here. Vince just had a good success story. We did a training on talking about reverse prospecting, and it worked well. You reverse prospect in the MLS. It's one of the most underutilized tools in our system. I think most realtors don't do it. And when you reverse prospect, you get your property in front of agents who have buyers. So I think that's very, very important. And then the other thing is we want to look at the hit counters on Zillow, Realtor.com, and other sites like that the general public is using more frequently. So these are some things I use and I make sure I have prior to making my price adjustment. We also have a weekly seller report that we send out with all of this information on it. I believe we shared that in a previous class, but just keep that in mind. Now, let's talk about best practices for a win. So for one, market updates every 7 days. I think this is very important that you update your clients every 7 days with a market update of everything going on. You also want to make sure when you call your client that you have the MLS up. You review the MLS prior to calling them. The last thing you want to do is call your seller and say, hey, it's time to make a price drop. And then that seller says, well, yeah, well, what about the house? My neighbor's house just went on the market yesterday and it's priced higher than ours, and you are unaware of it. Right? So it's very important that we're studying the market and knowing what's going on in their immediate area so we can keep them updated on that and they're not updating us. So I can't stress that enough. Make sure before you call your seller to get a price adjustment, or even before you call them to update them, make sure you check the MLS, see what's going on in their subdivision so you know everything. Did another house that was for sale in there go under contract? Did a house that was pending close, and now we can look at the price and see what it closed for? So very, very important that we make sure we're studying the market before making these calls. Now, this is something I used to do a ton, and because of e-signature, we don't do as much, but I will say it's very important. If your listing is expiring or you really need a price adjustment, but they're hesitant or they're pushing back on doing it, you need to go see them face-to-face. So face-to-face is very powerful when you're sitting at the kitchen table having a candid conversation. One, it shows you're invested in the sale and helping them achieve their goal of getting their home sold. Two, it's harder to turn down, a face-to-face. It's harder to turn that down. All right, I've taken the time now to come sit with them, meet with them, talk to them, talk about why maybe the home isn't selling and what we can do to employ a strategy to get it sold, which oftentimes is reducing the price. Face-to-face is very, very powerful. And so because we know that, make sure you do this. I know it takes time, right? We used to have to do this all the time before e-signatures back in the day. We had to get a listing amendment signed with a price adjustment. And so I'd have to go to the kitchen table, and it worked really, really well. Sure, it takes longer. Sure, it takes more time. Sure, you have to drive back to the house, and you're going to spend an hour there talking with them about not only the house, but other things as well. But it can be very effective. So keep that in mind. Don't be afraid to go face-to-face. Hey, I'd love to stop by, sit down, talk. I'd love to bring some data with me so I can share with you all of the feedback we're getting so far and really talk about our strategy moving forward to make sure we get your home sold. Nobody's listing their house with the intention of not selling it. So what happens, though, is a lot of times realtors won't have these conversations or don't know how to have these conversations. And then the listing expires. The next agent steps in, prices it correctly, and the house sells immediately, and they look like the hero. All they did was adjust the price. So pricing is very important. Now, when the market starts to shift, it's just as important to look at active comparables as well. They're just as important as solds. We need to see where pricing is going. So the reason being right here, because a home that sold in the spring may not get the same price today. So a house maybe that sold 6 months ago draw the same price today. And so we need to look at that and see that what the other actives are going for as well. Is pricing on active homes going up? Is it going down? Is it staying the same? Make sure we're looking at actives. This is an important one too. Turn down a reduction if you can't get at least 5 to 10% off the price. There's no point in taking a listing from $219,900 to $214,900. So if I do like a 2% adjustment, it's generally not going to do me any good. So it won't change a thing in traffic and no one will notice it. Very important. I see sellers doing it. They drop it $1,000. It's not going to do anything. All right, a 1% drop, a 0.5% drop. It's just not going to make a big enough impact to drive more traffic to your listing to get the property sold. So I would recommend turning it down. Some people might be like, well, it's better than nothing. But if you drop a house $1,000, let's just say 1%, it sends a signal to the market that your seller's not serious as well. So you have people right now, if you have a listing sitting there and it's stale and it's not getting activity, there are people watching that listing and waiting for a price drop because they see that listing and they're saying to themselves, okay, it's not worth what it's listed for today, but let's keep an eye on it because if they make an adjustment, then we'll go see it. That 5% adjustment might be enough to get those people off the fence to come see it. But if they see a drop of like $1,000 or 1%, they're going to say, okay, this seller is going to be difficult to work with. They're not serious about selling their home. They're not being realistic. So let's just move on and look for something else. So keep that in mind. Now, when talking to sellers, again, I mentioned this earlier, always have feedback showing activity in front of you. Very important. And before I would call my seller with an update, I would make sure I got feedback on every single showing that I had. Now, we know that agents aren't the best at giving feedback all of the time. That's why it's important to call them and continue to call them until you get feedback. Because the last thing you want to do is call and say, okay, we need an adjustment. And the seller says, well, we've had 6 showings. Where's the feedback? Well, I don't have any feedback on it. No one's filled it out. Well, let's get feedback and then we'll talk about making an adjustment. Make sure you get the feedback prior to making these phone calls. Now, even if you're attempting to get feedback and the agents haven't called you back or haven't filled it out online, I would let your seller know that. Hey, we've had 4 showings. I'm still working on feedback. I've got phone calls into every agent. I've also got emails into them and text messages. I'm working on getting feedback. That's a good update for your client that shows you're being proactive. So, but before you call to get these adjustments, I would try to get as much feedback as possible because your seller's going to ask about it before they drop the price. So keep that in mind. Now, are investments / improvements part of the conversation, are part of the discussion? So, I mean, yeah, as far as like pricing in that, of course. So like, the 2 ways, I guess that ties in right here, 2 ways to increase value script right here. To be the most desired home in your neighborhood, you either need to have the same features and benefits and lower the price, or improve your features and benefits, meaning improve the conditions and keep the price the same. So some people might say, well, let's just make some updates. We're getting a lot of feedback and everyone's saying X about the property. Maybe it smells, right? I had a listing and everyone's like, this place stinks. And it did. It smelled like pet. So that required us to clean the carpets. That didn't do the trick. So they had to replace the carpet. So without increasing the price. So I think that's important too, that To be the most desired home, you either need to have the same features and benefits and lower the price. So you have to be the same as everybody else and drop the price. Now you've increased value because you are now more valuable because you're offering the same at a lesser price. Or we need to improve the features and benefits. In this scenario, we had to go replace the carpet and we kept the price the same. It eliminated that people walking in. That's the first impression. They walk in, they're like, "Phew, this house is terrible," right? Even though they aired it out and had the carpets cleaned and all that, that smell came back. So keep that in mind. So I like the 2 ways to increase value script. Think about when you buy a car. If you buy a car, it's the same thing. If you have one car that's loaded, completely loaded, leather seats and heated steering wheel, heated and air conditioning seats, so on and so forth, and it's priced the same as the car that doesn't have the same options, well, which one are you going to buy? The one with all of the options. It's the same way with the house. Now let's dive into some initiate price reduction conversations. So again, you can do this over the phone, or you can, if they're pushing back, I would go meet them face to face. This is a conversation, a real conversation I would have. "Thanks for meeting with me. It shows me you're also concerned that your home is not sold. On a scale of 1 to 10, how honest do you want me to be with you?" And they're going to say 10, of course. Great, because other agents might price a home too high to get or keep a listing, but my job is to get your home sold for the best possible price and protect your best interest. Is that fair? Sure. Now, we've had 472 views online. We've had 16 showings, and we've had no offers to date. And now, keep in mind, I'm having all of my data here, right? All of my seller report, my showing time feedback, all of that is here with me on the kitchen table. Or if it's over the phone, it's in front of me. According to the National Association of Realtors, we know that when a listing has a low number of showings, now keep in mind, you need to correlate this script with however much activity you've had. So in this scenario, if we had 16 showings in the first 7 to 10 days, that's a lot. So we know that when listings have a high amount of activity, like your home, the home is generally priced 4 to 6% too high on average. And so I would just roll into that, and I wouldn't worry about doing the rest of the script. But let's just run it the way the script is written. So according to the National Association of Realtor Statistics, we know that when listings have a low amount of showings, a home's price is generally 2% too high on average. Similarly, when homes are getting showings but no offers, the home is priced 5% too high on average. So as you can see, we're getting the views and showings. We know price is the problem. Does that make sense? Yeah, I guess so. So they're gonna respond however they want to respond, but it's hard to argue with statistics. That's why I like to use them, because it's hard for somebody to say, well, no, that's not accurate. Well, yes, it is. It's a stat, right? Even though X amount of stats are made up, these are not. These are hard factual statistics that you can use in your business. So I'm going to run with that. We've had 37 showings, or we've had 437 views online. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all of my views from my hit counters in the MLS. I'm going to go to Zillow, pull those. I'm going to look on Realtor.com, Homes.com, anywhere I can find traffic, and I'm going to pull that and put that into my views. I'm going to put my showings there. I'm going to have all of my showing feedback available as well. And then we're going to say we have had no offers to date. According to NAR statistics, we know that when listings have a low amount of activity, homes priced 10% too high on average. Similarly, when homes are getting showings but no offers, it's 5% too high. So we're getting the views and we're getting the showings. We know price is the problem. Does that make sense? I think another thing, and I've got a script here, the market is rejecting our price. It's not me not doing my job. It's not their fault as a seller. It's the market. The market is rejecting our price. Very important. There it is. So I'll keep in mind, I want to rediscover motivation. Now it appears the market is rejecting our price. So tell me, it's still your intention to sell this home and get moved closer to the grandkids in Florida, right? Yes, it is. Don't you think it would be a good idea to do something about this immediately so we can make that happen? So I want to plug that motivation back in. So keep that in mind. I talk about motivation all the time. I want to get people's motivation early on from my first conversation with them. The first time I talk to them, whether they're an internet lead, a home, somebody's inquired about wanting to sell their property, it's expired for sale by owners or SOI referral, whatever the case may be, I want to figure out what is their intention, why do they want to buy a house, or why do they want to sell a house, what's important about that, where are they going, where are they moving, what is their motivation, what is their big why. And so I'm going to reaffirm and rediscover and reinsert their motivation here. It appears the market is rejecting our price. So tell me, when we first got together, you had mentioned that you wanted to sell this house in order to get moved to Florida to be closer to the grandkids. Is that still the case? Yes, it is. Fantastic. Don't you think it would be a good idea for us to do something about this immediately so we can achieve that goal of getting you closer to the grandkids? Yeah, I guess so. Okay, so you think we should roll the dice and see if a 5% reduction makes a difference, or play it safe by making an impact with a 10% adjustment so that we can get you to Florida quicker to see the grandkids or to be with the grandkids. Now, take a little note here. These percentages may be too high in many circumstances, but sellers are likely to feel much better about a 2.5% adjustment when they're made aware that a 5% reduction is the national average. So I mentioned earlier, 1% adjustments don't work. You know, $1,000 off a $500,000 sale isn't going to work. If we can get 2.5 or greater, go for it. But I would say push to 5 as much as possible. So 5 is the average, because you are going to get some people that push back, and something is better than nothing. But if it's like a tiny adjustment, don't do it. 2.5 or greater, though, I can usually live with if it's getting a lot of activity. And I've had conversations with these agents, and maybe if the price was a little bit lower, they would be interested. So keep that in mind. But so do you think we should roll the dice and see if a 5% adjustment makes a difference, or play it safe by making an impact with a 10% adjustment so we can help you get this home sold and get you moved to Florida to be closer to the grandkids? I get it too. 10% is a lot, right? 200K house, 10% is 20 grand. If it's not getting showings, though, that's probably what it's going to take. $500,000 house, it's a $50,000 adjustment. $1 million house, it's a $100,000 adjustment. It's a lot. I get it. And it's probably because we priced the home too high to begin with. So a lot of times what happens too, when we go on our presentation, we say the house is worth $700,000, they want $800,000. All right, all of the comparables and data show $700,000, they want $800,000. We agree and let them list it at $800,000. And now it's time to make an adjustment, all right, because we're not getting any activity. So we need to make at least a $70,000 or $80,000 adjustment. And they're like, that's crazy. You know, that's too much. But the house should have been priced $100,000 to begin with. So it's not like we're really making that big of an adjustment. We just missed the mark on price to begin with. So keep that in mind. We're going to talk about that here in a minute too, on how to not overprice listings out of the gate. So the other thing here is I don't recommend that you give it away, though we need to make a price adjustment that will cause your home to sell now instead of having to make a larger reduction 60 or 90 days down the road. Remember, I work for you, so it must be your decision. So tell me, what are you thinking? Should we adjust by 5, 10, or 15%? So again, it's reaffirming, like, I don't want you to give the house away either. And we have to do something now that will cause the home to sell. And I like using that verbiage. We need to make it a price adjustment that will cause your home to sell now instead of having to make a larger reduction down the road. Because here's what happens. When days on market accumulates, what do buyers think? Especially when we're still in a seller's market like we've been in. If somebody sees a house and it's sitting out there for 60 days, what do buyers think? They immediately think something's wrong with the house. What's wrong with it? Why is it still on the market? What's wrong with it? There's got to be something wrong. Why isn't it sold? There's nothing wrong with it. It just was priced too high. The house I'm home right now, the house I bought a couple of years ago, was on the market for, I think, 3 or 4 months. All right. And I got a pretty deep discount on it because pictures were terrible. It was priced too high. It was an open door property. But I thought the same thing. I'm like, what's wrong with this thing? Why is it sitting there? Aside from the fact that it needed complete renovation as well. But I got a really good discount on it because I went in, took a look at it. I made a significantly lower offer that they took. But that's something that we have to keep in mind. You immediately start thinking, I thought the same thing. What's wrong with this property? Why is it still sitting out there? There's no other activity or no other inventory on the market. This thing's just sitting there for months without offers. All it was priced too high. So keep that in mind that with the scripting, I don't recommend we give it away, though we need to make a price adjustment that will cause your home to sell now instead of having to make a larger reduction 60 or 90 days down the road. That's why having these conversations in the first 7 to 10 days are very, very important as well. And I tell sellers that when I'm on the presentation. Look, I'm getting my listing agreement signed. We've established a price based on the comparables. What I'm testing here when we go to market, I know my marketing strategy works. I've sold many, many homes. I've sold over 1,000 homes. So I know my marketing strategy works. What we're really testing here is price. And so we're going to know within the first 7 to 10 days if we're spot on with price or if we need to make an adjustment. The way we're going to know that is because I'm going to be looking at all of the data. I'll be getting all of the information from a statistical standpoint of how many views we're getting online. We'll be getting feedback from the showings that we're getting. If we do an open house, we'll get feedback from that as well. And I'm going to relay all of that data to you. And I know from my experience and from an NAR statistics that if we're getting a lot of activity, we're not getting offers, we're most likely 4 to 6% off on price. Now, would you be okay making a 4 to 6% adjustment within 10 days if we don't have an offer for your home? I have those conversations at the listing presentation and prep my sellers for that. That look, if we're not sold in the first week, because we are still in a very strong seller's market and this house should sell quickly, especially with all of the marketing I do and all of the exposure I'm going to get on the property, are you prepared? Let's be prepared to at least have that conversation and talk about employing a new strategy so we can ensure your home gets sold, so we can get you moved to the Ozarks or Florida or wherever they're going. All right, so make sure you're having those conversations on the listing presentation as well. Now, here's a couple of scripts here, and then I'm going to talk about pricing. I'm not going to go through each of those scripts, but a market-based price adjustment script. I wanted to touch base with you about the feedback we've been getting on your home. While buyers love the property, the market is showing that we may need to adjust the price to attract serious offers. Now, why would I say that? Because here's what tends to happen. We get feedback from agents, and it says, oh, the house is great. It's priced right. My client's not interested. How many times have you gotten feedback there? I'm looking at notes here, comments. How many times have you gotten that feedback? Well, everyone's saying the house is priced correctly. So the agents are saying it's priced correctly, but the client's not interested. What that means is that their client didn't see enough value in the home in order to make an offer. So they could say it's priced correctly, but it's not because they didn't make an offer on it. So you'll get this a lot with sellers saying, well, all the feedback says it's priced right. Well, it's not priced right, or somebody would have made an offer. So while I want to touch base with you about your feedback we've been getting on your home, while buyers love the property, the market is showing that we may need to adjust the price to attract serious offers. Homes in your area that are selling, that are priced around $500,000, homes in your area that are selling are priced around $500,000. Right now, we're seeing a gap between what buyers are willing to pay and where we are currently priced. Would you be open to adjusting the price slightly to create more interest and get offers coming in? So that is something that we can use there. Now, keep that in mind. You will get feedback. That's why it's so important to call after you get feedback. If somebody says the house was priced correctly, my client's not interested, thank you for letting me show. That is not valuable feedback to take to your seller. That's gonna do you a disservice because they're gonna say, well, they said it was priced right. Why do we have to drop the price? Everyone said it's priced right. Call that agent and say, hey, thank you so much for showing my listing and thank you for providing feedback. I saw that your client thought it was priced correctly. Is there anything we can do to make this house number one on their list? Is there anything we can do to get them to make an offer? This is where you'll get the true feedback right now. Oh, God, yeah. No. This is where you'll get, working from home. This is where you'll get the true feedback of what was really wrong with the house. And so that's what I want to do. I want to call them. I want to ask them, is there anything we can do to make this house number one on their list? And what's going to happen there is they're going to say, well, no, they hated the floor plan. The floor plan didn't work for them. The house was too small. They didn't like the fact that the backyard had a slope and there was no way to put a swing set. Whatever the case may be, you're going to get honest feedback if you call the agent and ask for it. And then you can really relay that detailed feedback to your seller. So that way your feedback doesn't all just say the house is priced great, it shows great, they're just not interested. There is a reason they're not interested, and we need to uncover what that reason is. Now, if it's a condition like, let's say, we've sold homes in the past that have terrible backyards, completely sloped. There's no backyard. We know that's going to be an issue going into it for a lot of buyers. So we need to adjust the price accordingly to show more value in the home while offsetting the fact that there's no backyard. So just keep that in mind. Those are some things there. Leo just posted in a PDF too with all of these scripts as well in the chat or in the comments. So feel free to click that link and grab these scripts. Days on market script. We've been on the market for 37 days now, and we know that the longer homes sit, the more buyers start to wonder why. I mentioned this earlier. The good news is we can prevent that by adjusting the price to align with buyers' expectations. Right now, similar homes in the area are getting offers at around whatever the price point is. And I want you to position your home to sell while the market is still active. Would you be open to a strategic price adjustment to help get it sold faster? This is where, again, I relay all of my data And I let them know that right now we've had tons of activity or we've only had one showing. We are now somewhere between 6 to 10% off on price. We've had low showings, low activity, a high number of people looking at it online, because sellers will say that too. Well, we're getting lots of people are looking at it online. Why is nobody coming to see it? Well, we know 97% of home buyers start their search online. Right? We know that we're getting tons of people looking at it online. And when people view our house online, that is our first showing. Back in the day, it was all about curb appeal. Now it's about web appeal. The house has to show very well online. And so because we're getting so many people looking at it online and no one's coming to see it, that means they're rejecting one of two things. The marketing's working. Remember the 3 things to sell a house. The marketing's working. They're either rejecting the condition that they're seeing online or they're rejecting the price. And so because of that, that's what's telling us that we need to make an adjustment. Hundreds of people have looked at this house and no one's come to see it. There's something off. Is my photography terrible? Right? Did the photographer not do a good job of painting the picture the way it shows? Or is the price, most likely it's the price is wrong. And so keep that in mind too. If getting lots of activity online, no one's coming to see it, it's a price thing. First impressions, again, we put these in here. I'm going to jump forward real quick. This is something I talk to sellers about as well on a listing presentation. Pricing strategy. So the cost of overpricing. So I have this in my listing presentation. If they start pushing back and I say the house is worth 600 and they're like, nope, we need 700. I totally understand. And what people need and what reality is 2 different things, right? There are lots of things we need, and in reality, we might not get them. And so I want to talk to sellers about the cost of overpricing. And so I share this slide with them and I say, I completely understand you want, let's just say it's 650, house is worth 600. I completely understand you would like to get 650,000 for your home. And all of the data I've presented here today and the comparables of what is selling in your neighborhood is showing your home is worth 600,000, and that's where we should be listed in order to get your home set at a price that will cause it to sell. Now, I understand you'd like to get 650. I want to get you the most money possible, and my goal as well is to get this home sold for you so we can help you get moved to Florida to be closer to the grandkids. And what I'd like to share with you is a graph here of what this could look like and how you could end up potentially losing money if we price your home too high out of the gate. Now, let's just say number 1 here on my slide is fair market value of what your home is worth. And let's say that's $600,000. And now we list your home at number 2, which is our initial list price of $650,000. When we first go to the market, that is when we are going to get the most interest on your property, because I'm going to start pushing out all of my marketing. I'm going to get your home on over 350 different real estate related websites. I'm going to reverse prospect your house and get it in front of every single agent that potentially has a buyer for your home. I'm going to be running internet ads and driving traffic to my website to get qualified buyers in the door. I'll be hosting an open house. We're going to do a lot in the first week that your home is on the market, and that's where we're going to get the most interest for your property. What tends to happen though is that if we are priced too high and the market interest isn't great enough to reach our initial list price, which is number 3 here, that means that the market interest, while 600 is what I believe could be fair market value, we potentially could get over asking offers if we priced it at 600. But if we go at 650, the market interest most likely will not be high enough to reach your list price. And then what happens with market interest is it falls quickly. It falls very quickly. So number 4, you can see that market interest starts to fall off. And that means the value of your home now, which was once at one point higher than 600, is now starting to fall. And what we have to do is start making price adjustments, which is number 5. And we're now doing what's called chasing the market. And when we have to chase the market, generally what happens is market interest falls faster than the price adjustments we make. And so we start cutting the price to chase falling market value, and we end up somewhere around number 6 and 7. Now, would you rather be at number 3 or number 6? Of course you would rather be at number 3. So why don't we do the right thing and price your home at 600, which is what all of the data supports, and we could potentially drive a ton of traffic here and maybe get you over 600,000 for your house. How does that sound? So again, simple script, and that's where we want to show them what the power of pricing their home correctly is. So I feel this is a very powerful slide. It shows a very good graph. Of course, everybody would rather be at number 3 than number 6 because they want to be at number 2, but number 2 is not realistic. And we need to relay that to them. I get people want more, as much for their home as possible. All right. And we can only give them what the market will bear. And what the market will bear is the comparables and the supporting comparables that we show them. So if everything's showing them their house is worth 600 and they want 650, well, I get it. I would love for them to get 650, and it's not realistic, especially based off hard proven data. That's why it's important to have statistics or have comparables in your presentation as well. The better you get at pricing homes, the more effective you're going to be at being a listing agent. So present that data to them and show them this slide. Learn how to present this slide. It can be a very powerful tool. Another slide I want to share too is this one. I like this graph too. I talk about being priced at market value. If we price your home at market value, we generally get about 60% of the active buyers looking at your property immediately. Now, if we price your home 10% too high, that number lessens. If we're 10% above that, 30% of the active buyers see your property. If we price it 10% below market value, we get a lot more eyes on the property. There is power in pricing your home a little bit under market value because people see deal and they all want to come see it. You know, there was a house the other day that I showed for a friend of mine. It was in Ladue, priced at $799. That's cheap. You know, it was a very nice updated house for that area. There was like 40 people there. These were showings. It wasn't even an open house. She ended up having like 90 people through between the showings and the open house. And it went way over asking. We lost out on it, 160,000 over asking. Went 160,000 over asking and still didn't get the house. Keep that in mind. If they were priced below market value, and what happened was it drove so much traffic to that property that it took the price way above where it probably would have sold. Had they started that house at 960 where we offered, chances are they wouldn't have had as much activity and it probably would have drawn less than 960, but instead it went over 960. So keep that in mind. That's why people too like love foreclosures, right? Because they think deal. Oh, if it's a foreclosure, it's got to be a deal because it has to be severely discounted. Not always, but that's the initial thought that people have. So if we price a home slightly below market value, we're going to get more eyes on it. We're going to get more buyers looking at it, which then could drive the price up, which is not a bad strategy. So this is something I use in my slides as well on my listing presentation. But my point here is make sure you're talking about pricing, not just like, oh, you want to list it at 800? Sure, that sounds good. Let's try it out. Make sure you have good conversations with them and set the stage that if we're not sold in the first 7 to 10 days, we need to make an adjustment. We need to make an adjustment based off our slides on number one of if it's not getting any showings, we're 10% or greater off on price. We need to make an adjustment there. So again, these are helpful slides. I would encourage you to put them in your listing presentation, learn how to articulate them. And then here, let's run through a couple more scripts, then we'll wrap up. We know that when buyers are looking at homes, this is the first impressions. They compare properties side by side. Right now, we're priced a bit higher than homes with similar features, which might be causing hesitation. By adjusting the price to be more competitive, we can make sure your home is one of the first they consider. I want to put your home in the best position to sell. How do you feel about adjusting the price slightly to spark more interest? Yeah, I guess we need to do something. Yeah, should we take it down to 1,000? Well, let's keep in mind, let's go back to the statistics. Based on the activity we're getting and not having offers, we're most likely 4 to 6% off on price. So I think by making a small adjustment, it's not going to make a big enough impact to cause your home to sell. I highly recommend we adjust it by 5% to ensure we get your property sold and help you get moved to wherever they're going next. Insert motivation. All right, so keep that in mind. Next one, price first time. I know your goal is to sell this home as soon as possible for the best price. Right now, the data is showing that homes in your price range are taking longer to sell. While homes priced at 600,000 are moving much faster, my job is to help you balance getting the most money with the shortest time on the market. If we adjust the price now, we can create fresh interest and avoid extended days on market, which can lead to even lower offers down the road. Would you be open to discussing an adjustment? So again, everybody wants to sell their home quickly. They don't want to give it away, and I get that. But keep in mind, the longer we sit on market, the less likely we have of getting them top dollar for their home. So price first time, multiple buyer approach. We've had interest, but no solid offers yet, and I don't want you to miss the best buyers. A small price adjustment can trigger multiple interested parties, potentially leading to a faster sale and an even better final offer. In my experience, pricing slightly more competitively actually leads to a stronger interest and sometimes even multiple offers. Would you be open to making a minor adjustment to get ahead of the competition? Keep that in mind. Just because you didn't get multiple offers out of the gate because you were priced too high, if you make a big enough adjustment, you could drive more traffic to the property and get multiple offers. Who on this call has lost out? House was sitting on the market for 30 days. Their client, they just made an adjustment. Their client went in, their buyer went in to look at it, made an offer, and they got beat out by another offer. It's like, wait, the house has been on for 30 days. And now there's 2 offers on the property. A lot of people think that realtor might not be telling the truth, but the reality is if we make a big enough adjustment, it will drive enough interest back to the property to potentially get multiple offers on it. So yeah, Toika says me, yeah, we all have, right? It's like, wait a minute, this house has been on the market for 3 months and now all of a sudden there's multiple offers on it. That doesn't seem right. But the reason there's multiple offers on it most likely is because they probably just recently made a price adjustment that increased the value of the property. At a lower price, there is more value in the property. Happens all the time. So keep that in mind when working with buyers as well, that if you've been said, yep, too, exactly, we've all been there. Keep that in mind. Buyers might go look at a property and, oh, it's been on the market for 2 months, we could lowball it. Well, they just did a 10% adjustment on the price, so we probably can't lowball it. And I like to look at the sign-in sheet too. Look, they just did a 10% adjustment on the price. 6 people came to see it today. So if they have a sign-in sheet, that's a good way to gauge kind of activity too. Also on showing time, you can see the showings blocked out typically, so you know that there's a lot of activity on the property. Keep that in mind too. This is flipping the script here and working with buyers. But just because a house has been sitting there forever, if they just did a pretty sizable adjustment, chances are there's a lot of activity on the property now, and we might not be able to go in low, quote unquote. We might have to pay what they're asking, or we might have to compete multiple offers. So keep that in mind. Hopefully this was helpful. Again, we put all the scripts online here. The biggest thing I would say though is get in a habit of talking to your sellers every week. So my seller reports that we always sent out to sellers would incorporate the showing time feedback, the hit counters through the MLS, and the hit counters through all of the various websites. I would pull all of the comparables before I made a call to my seller to make sure I was studying the market and knew exactly what was going on. Because again, going back to what I said earlier, there's nothing worse than calling your seller and they know of a listing that just hit the market down the street and you were unaware of it. It's happened to me in the past when I wasn't prepared. Well, yeah, what about that one that just went on the market down a street over? What's going on with that one? And I'm like, well, what are they talking about? So make sure you're prepared. Study the market. That's our job, right? Study the market, be prepared before you have these conversations, and get in the habit of calling your sellers every week with an update. It's going to go a long way. That's one of the things too I employed when I used to sell tons of expired listings. I would set listing appointments. I would go on them every single time, not every time, but I'd say 95% of the time when I would talk to the sellers and I'd say, how was the experience with your last agent when you were on the market? The bulk of the time they would say, I never heard from them. The communication wasn't great. We couldn't get a hold of them. We didn't hear from them the last 2 months. We wanted to drop the price and we had to call them and ask them to drop the price. So I employed a communication guarantee. This is something you might want to add into your presentation, especially as days on market tends to trend up. Communication guarantee. I have a communication guarantee. What my communication guarantee says is that every single week you're going to hear from me with an update. And so chances are you're going to hear from me more than once a week, because as we're getting showings and I'm getting feedback, I'm going to relay that information to you immediately. But at bare minimum, I'm going to call you weekly with an update, letting you know everything that I'm doing to market and sell your home. I'm going to be giving you feedback. I'm going to be showing you different statistics and hit counters so we can ensure that we get your property sold quickly and for the most money. Does that sound good? Yeah, absolutely. So make sure, maybe throw that into your presentation. It puts people at ease, because a lot of times, unfortunately, communication between the agent and the client is not the best when it comes to people selling their homes. So if you can be the agent that elevates the bar, if you will, and you're updating your clients weekly, and then it comes time to get a price adjustment, it's going to be a lot easier. It's going to be a lot easier to get a price adjustment if you've kept in communication with your client than if you haven't talked to them in 3 weeks or a month, and now you call and be like, yeah, I guess we need to drop the price. And then what are they going to say? Well, what are you doing to sell the house? All right. So if you keep in mind, this is a team effort. They are hiring you to get your home sold. You have to work with them to make sure that we're pricing the home correctly, the condition's good, the marketing. And that's what I often tell sellers too. There's 3 things that sell a home: price, condition, marketing. Of the 3, I control the marketing. You ultimately determine where we price the home. I'm going to supply you with all the information so you can make an informed decision on it. And I'm going to have some guidance. I'll have a staging consultant come in and help you get your home ready to sell. Ultimately, you control the price and the condition, and I control the marketing. Of the three, though, keep in mind, price. So hopefully this was helpful. Any questions? Yeah, thank you, Toika, for that. Great info, always something new to learn, regardless of the years in the business, for sure. We're never stop learning, right? That's the biggest thing. Once agents, you hear those agents that are like, I've been doing this 30 years, right? And they've sold like 10 houses in 30 years. Keep that in mind. We can always learn. We can always get better. Tenure in the business does not give us experience, right? Length of time in the business does not give us experience. What gives us experience is selling houses. A first-year agent that sells 40 homes can be way more experienced than a 10-year agent that's sold 20 homes, right? So experience. So yeah, I agree, Toika. It's always about getting better, improving. We can always improve our process. We can always become better, and we can always become, we're always should be striving to be the best realtor possible. And so the way we do that is practice, get good at these things, and really hone in on the small details that make us really good. Question here, what would you say are good ways to track and measure the impact of a price adjustment? Showings. So showings are the best way, good question. The best way to track that would be how many showings did I get based on that price adjustment? If I did a 5% price adjustment and no one's still coming to see the property, but my views online are still very high, so you can track that too. Keep in mind, like let's say views, you're going to get, when you first go to the market, your online views should be very high. They may start to fall off. And then if I do a price adjustment, they should spike up again. So if my views online go way up, but my showings don't go way up, I know that I probably still need to make another adjustment. But again, keep in mind those stats. I'll go back to them real quick. I would put this in your presentation too. This one right here. Keep that in mind. These are very accurate. Just from, not only because it's an NAR stat, but just from personal experience, they're very accurate. If I make an adjustment, if I'm getting a lot of activity and it doesn't sell, I do a 5% adjustment, it will probably sell. It's rare that if I make a 5% adjustment with a ton of activity on the listing that it doesn't sell. If I'm only getting 1 or 2 showings, 6 to 12%, somewhere in that line. If no one's coming to see it, 12% or greater. Now, keep this in mind too. We talked about it yesterday during script practice. Real estate is hyper-local. So because real estate is hyper-local, what that means is that if I have let's just say right now in St. Charles County, over $1 million may be a buyer's market, right? Even though overall we're in a seller's market in the MLS, across the MLS for single family homes, over 3 months of inventory, that is a seller's market. But dependent on price point, that could be a buyer's market. We used Jim Edmonds' home on the market right now. I think it's like $9 million in Ladue. That's a big price point for St. Louis. So that home, we can't go in there and be like, oh yeah, we're in a seller's market. This is going to sell quickly at $9 million. At $9 million, there's not a large buyer pool. That means that we're not in a seller's market at a $9 million price point in Ladue. We're in a very, 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 very strong buyer's market because there's not that many active buyers looking to purchase a home of that caliber or that price point. So keep that in mind too. Pricing matters, area matters. So real estate is hyper local. Make sure you're not just blanketed saying, oh, we're in a seller's market, it's going to sell quick. Know your market, know your area, look and see in that zip code and in that price range, how many homes turn over in there. If I take I want to know that, like, again, hyper local. Homes, a 250 home in St. Charles is going to be a different market than a 900 in Chesterfield. All right, so just keep that in mind. It's hyper local. Know your areas, know your market. Overall, we are in a seller's market with inventory levels starting to rise a little bit, but it's really going to be dependent on the local area. You can do it by school district, by zip code, but more importantly, in that price point, what are homes selling for? So again, hope it was helpful. I appreciate everybody being on. Again, Leo linked in the scripts there, so feel free to grab those and use them. And that's all we have for today. Appreciate you all being on. And best practice, yeah, he just linked it again there. So make sure you grab that out of the chat window or in the comments. Use these scripts, practice these scripts, get good at them. This becomes a lot easier. Once you get price adjustments for something when I was new that used to kind of scare me, intimidate me, because you feel personally guilty that the house hasn't sold. So you personally feel like I'm failing because I haven't sold their house. It's not the case. We just didn't price it correctly. So once you kind of make terms of that, and that's why I always say the market is rejecting our price. The market is rejecting our price. It's not me. It's not anything I'm doing. But I feel that when you put a process in place to educate your sellers or update your sellers every week, and you study the market, you can have a candid conversation with them that, look, the marketing is working. We're getting people in the door. Or the marketing is working. Hundreds of people have viewed it online and no one's coming to see it in person. That is the market rejecting our price. So we know the marketing is working because people are looking at it online. No one's choosing to come see it because they're not seeing the value from what they're seeing online that correlates with the price. We need to get the price. We need to adjust the price to a price that will cause your home to sell. And in my experience, because we're not getting any showings, we're most likely a little bit over 10% off on price. So just make sure you know these statistics, you can articulate them to your client and have the supporting data to share with them. But I promise you, if you start doing price adjustments weekly, or excuse me, you start updating your sellers weekly, price adjustment conversations become a lot easier. It's when we neglect to call our clients because we don't know what to say, then we start to feel strange or awkward, and then we wait for them to call us, and then it's even worse because then it's reactive. I want to be proactive always in updating my client, and I want to be the person leading, not just waiting for them to give me guidance on what they want to do. So again, thanks for being on. Appreciate you all. Apologize for some of the background noise this morning. But if you need anything, call, text anytime, and we will see you all very soon. Thanks, everybody.